Today on World Traveler Cooking, from sunny Tuscany, we make a wonderful classic bread salad called Panzanella. This salad is just a wonderful summer treat. It can be used as a light meal by itself, or perhaps with a little bit of a snack such as cheese or something to give a little bit of protein. But it's a wonderful little salad, and wanted to show it to you. The ingredients are quite simple. I have about 50 grams or so of stale bread, and I'm using a ciabatta here because obviously I can't get a proper Tuscan white bread. If you're in the US, I'd recommend some sort of an artisanal white sourdough. I think it works best to dry the bread out until it is completely dry. I don't think that's quite traditional, but I like the texture better that way. And I don't think anybody would object to doing it that way in Italy, just because this is one way you can use stale bread. Another reason to have stale bread of this sort around is it's good for gazpacho and some other things. In fact, you might notice the ingredients are very, very similar to a gazpacho. You have the bread, cucumbers, tomatoes. Some people put onion in gazpacho, though I've never seen anybody put parsley in gazpacho. But we also have olive oil and vinegar, which are also primary items in gazpacho. So let's go ahead and get started. What we're going to do is we're going to soak this bread in some water for about 20 minutes while we prepare all of our veggies, and we'll be going from there. So the first step is just that we add about a cup or so of water to our bread, and it doesn't have to be exact. If you add a little more, we'll end up draining it before. But you want it to be enough that this is going to really get fully wet, and so make sure that the top crusts have gotten wet. And we're going to set this aside and let it soak for 20 minutes while we prepare veggies. So first we're going to take our cucumber. This is about a quarter of a cucumber here, of a large cucumber. You can use more or less. This is about, I think, 150 grams or so. And we're just going to cut it into half moons. We're going to lay it out on the mixing plate. And the order of the veggies actually makes a difference, so do pay attention to that. And if you forget to do a veggie, you can always come back and add it, but it works better in this order. So once this is done, I'm going to cut the tomatoes into chunks. Obviously you want a nice sharp knife for this. But if your knife isn't super sharp, then, this is a sharp knife, but it's not quite sharp enough, I think. Then what you can do is you can poke the tomato where you want to cut it for guidelines. And then just slice downward. And I like smaller tomato pieces, but and then you can take a quarter of a tomato each time, set it on the side, and then slice it how you'd like. And then this goes on top of the cucumbers. I'm going to do the same thing with the whole tomato, and then I'll be back to deal with the onion. Now, even the small onion may be more like twice of what I need, so I'm actually going to cut it in half before I peel it, and I'm not going to be too worried about losing the outer layer. Keep in mind, the first edible layer on the onion can also be a little tough, so what we're going to do now is cut this into half rings, very thin half rings. we're going to lay this out on the top here. And now all we have to do, next thing we have to do is to wait for our bread to be done. But while this is happening, we can lightly salt our veggies. And some people like to put a little bit of olive oil on the veggies. And I think I'll do that this time also. So I've also cut my parsley. I'm going to set that aside for now. And we're going to come back to the bread. What I'm going to do with the bread is I'm going to tear it into kind of large pieces. I'm going to squeeze out any remaining liquid, and I'm going to crumble it onto the top here. The reason why we have to let the bread sit for a full 20 minutes is because if you don't do that, the crusts are still going to be tough. And there shouldn't be a lot of liquid in the bread. If there's a lot of liquid in the bread, then you've probably done something wrong. This is a little more liquid than I would prefer in the bread, but it's a little hard with a bowl like this. I also drained the initial water out of the bowl after just a couple of minutes. Sorry about the sirens. And then we're just going to, actually, before I go any further, I'm going to dress this with plenty of olive oil and some vinegar, as you like. Then I'm going to toss it up. To plate, you can use a spoon, but we're just going to basically pile it into a nice mound in the middle of the plate. This probably could have used a little more bread and a little less veggies, but oh well. And then we will top with our chopped parsley. Some people also like to add basil, but here we are. And now for the taste test. The parsley can give this almost a little bit of a tabbouleh-like flavor. Otherwise, the closest thing I can compare this to is actually gazpacho. It's really quite delicious and quite delightful. Now, if you find this content interesting and useful, I hope I've earned a subscription from you. And please feel free to like, share, and comment on the content itself. Now, in fact, on that latter point, I want to say that if there's something you think I could have done better, or you think other cooks should do differently on these recipes, I always like to see that content in the comments, because there may be things which I do one way, somebody has a different opinion. There may be things where I've made a change for cinematic reasons. There may be things where, even I could be wrong. So don't hesitate to offer those sorts of suggestions. It helps everybody who wants to make this dish at home. Now, as always, the recipe's in the description. Bon appetit, and see you next week.